Okay. We are now recording. Hello. Welcome everybody. I am Takisha. If you see, I have some unique pronouns today, my she, they pronouns. We'll talk about that at some point in life, but they're there. From Chocolate Milk Cafe, I'm the executive director, formerly a facilitator for Newark location in New Jersey. We are here today to celebrate I Acknowledge Black Breastfeeding Week. Joining me today is Jillian Faulks, facilitator for Newark chapter. You see how we coordinate so well today. I'm gonna drop a little. Get yourself that Milk Life shirt that we have for this year. Many people have expressed that they wanted shirts that we had from last year, these shirts or whatever. So we have a campaign going on, and it'll be on our social medias. So go look out for. I mean, it's there already, but we have fundraiser, and it's closing soon because your limited time to get a shirt from us is closing. I guess I should make that clear that this is not an extended offer forever. You have a limited time to get the shirts, t-shirts and sweatshirts, and we even have a kid's shirt on there. We would love for you to go enjoy that. So yeah, we're here today to talk about tandem feeding, the experience that Jillian and I have had. And if you want to join in the comments section or send us emails or whatever about your experiences, we're here to listen and share those. We want to normalize all experiences of lactating in the Black community. Jillian, do you have any intro stuff to say before I start rambling on? Because I'm in still my sleepy mode, so I can.
No, I think you introduced me, and we'll go more into our nursing experiences in a bit, right?
Anything about you specifically? Like, what else you want people to know about you?
Oh, I'm Jillian, Chocolate Milk Cafe facilitator in Newark. I also lead a home visiting program for now and do some wellness stuff on the side. I've got two boys who I nursed for a bit of time, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And I love to learn, grow, and share together as a community. So that's what I love about Chocolate Milk Cafe. It's just all about learning, growing, and sharing together. So that's me in a nutshell.
Highlight any of your yoga and meditation experiences.
Oh yes, I do teach yoga and have certifications and things. And as I move through life, I'm beginning to realize what I love to do privately versus sharing. So I guess I'm kind of paused with what I share about that.
Yeah. That's what we love about you. So, I'm getting into it. We'll talk about that when we get into rest and stuff like that.
Yes.
Like what you're saying there, kind of exploring what makes you happy. That doesn't necessarily mean something that you need to tell others about. I go back and forth with that with baking and cooking and stuff. Hey, I made this thing, and then some days I'm like, well, yeah, I don't need to know what I'm enjoying eating it. I don't have time to take a picture of it and share it with others, or I take the picture and then I never share it or something. So yeah, that's a good thing to bring up. But yeah, so we're here today. We are Chocolate Milk Cafe, peer-to-peer lactation support for people of the African diaspora. What that means, families of the African diaspora, what that means is we support the lactating person who identifies and his lived experience is that of a Black person in the United States and beyond. We are combating the Black maternal health rates, and that's why we focus on that. Those rates are related to the lactating person with the melanin of someone of the African diaspora. I don't know how else to phrase this because this is some confusion we get sometimes. So if you yourself have the experience of lactating as someone of the African diaspora, we're here for you. We want you to also bring your nursling, the person that you are nursing or providing human milk to, chest feeding, body feeding, pumping, expressing milk, however you show up in that way. We want you to bring the other kids if you have other ones. We want you to bring the grandparents. We want you to bring the supportive spouse. If there are not even significant other, the other person that's helping you parent, right? Who is in partnership with you, even if it's a friend, we want you to bring all of them along too for the journey, because we know a supportive family ensures that you are likely to, get into it for the long haul. So so when we say families, that's what we mean as the extension, but we are primarily wanting to support the lactating person of the African diaspora. Some people know why I need to emphasize. If you have any questions as to if you're not of the African diaspora and you need support, there are tons of other organizations out there. We're proud to, we will love to share with you other resources. Our resources are for us. Black Breastfeeding Week. It has been, I sometimes forget all the names. I want to say Anaya. I'm sorry if I say it wrong. Kimberly and Kadada, this is their brainchild, because we all need some support initially, specifically in the Black community related to lactation. You might hear terminology, it's calling it Black Body Feeding Week, Black Baby Feeding Week. We're trying to be more inclusive in the terminology we use. I call it what it is. It's Black Breastfeeding Week, but I also like to throw into that with that being said, I am here. Chocolate Milk Cafe is here. We are here to support all of the different ways that you show up. So body feeding, chest feeding, human milk feeding, we are here for you. If someday people want to change the name to be more inclusive, I'm here for it. I won't. But I will use the hashtags and just add some on. So yeah, so that was what, I don't remember what year we're in. Are we in year 9 or 8 of, do you know?
I think it's 8.
So sometimes I'm thinking about it so much throughout the year. So then I'm like, okay, well, did it change? It's like the kids, you're like, oh, how old are you now?
Or myself.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have to like count backwards. I remember the year I was born. So yeah. So this is designated time this year. You may, if you've been paying attention, it's World Breastfeeding Awareness Month. The month of lactation is August. And the first week is designated for World Breastfeeding Week. The second week was Indigenous people. I think they changed their name to Indigenous medicine, milk medicine. I love the terminology milk medicine. It just sounds so beautiful. And then the third week was Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Hawaiian. I think I got all the terminology. I'm not sure if I missed one. And then, of course, Black Breastfeeding. That was their first year. Indigenous Native medicine, milk medicine. I think this is their second year doing Awareness Week. And I want to say there's a Hispanic Latinx one that's in September. I have not looked that up since I keep saying it, but I think there is one. So we have been highlighting all the different weeks, Black Breastfeeding. We're always the 25th to the 31st, the last 7 days of the month. I know it gets confusing when the month starts on a Sunday, so it is what it is. So here we are. We are talking today about tandem feeding. Some people call it tandem nursing. You may think that means that you are feeding a toddler. When I looked it up, it was expressing that it's when somebody is feeding an infant, like a newborn, and their older child, a toddler. And Jillian and I have been discussing how that's kind of a narrow take on it, because it'll have like a little caveat of like, oh, and if you have twins or multiples. So tandem in itself just means at the same time, right? You can tandem wear somebody, you can tandem carry, you can tandem bite. Like there's all these different things that have the terminology tandem, and it just means at the same time. It doesn't specifically mean that they need to be at your chest, actively latching at the exact same time. It just means that you're producing your human milk, or however you're providing human milk, for multiple beings. That's where we want to focus on today. So we decided I wanted to do since our last year when we had all of our meetings. I was like, you know what, we need to talk about tandem nurse. And there's not enough. As someone who has tandem nurse, I have not seen a lot of conversation in the Black community about it. So Jillian and I both have experiences and we've known each other for a decent amount of time. Our children are, your youngest is now 8.
8, yes, as of this month.
And my youngest will be 7 next month. So we both had our first by the time we met. So it's been a while. You're one in my what I call mommy friends clique. Jillian is one of the oldest ones.
Yay.
Well,
going strong.
So it's good. So yeah, we want to talk about it a little bit.
Can I add to the tandem, I guess, definition? Also thinking about, because you reminded me of this, how it's not necessarily human to human, right? Infant, baby, toddler to body. It's also if you are pumping and providing milk for multiples as well.
Yeah, I figure, we get into that. Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So feeding, so we're going to talk about Jillian's journey and then we're going to get into that. But yes, that is the way I think it should be identified. And that is when we really think about it, like if you are providing milk for another being, we talk about like the history of Black in the Black community about what we call cross nursing or what has been known as wet nursing. We were feeding multiple babies. Black community has been tandem feeding. And beyond that, I don't mean to like act as if that was the start. Like in other communities, in other cultures, aunts, siblings, friends of the family are nursing multiple babies. If you gotta go do something, you can just pass off your baby to another person and they'll feed your baby while they're feeding their own. This is what happens when you're in a supported culture for lactating, that everybody is just, the village is feeding the children. So to bring that up. So we're going to talk about that. So Jillian, since I've been like really talking it out, maybe you can start, since you have the more, I don't even want to say traditional, but the more familiar experience of tandem. So can you tell everybody like what your experience is like?
Yep. So I have 2 boys. They're 2 years apart, almost exactly. One is born August 9th and the other is August 22nd. And my first tandem experience, so I nursed through my second pregnancy, even though the doctor told me I wasn't supposed to. But backup information is important. No, not everyone can nurse through a pregnancy because it could lead to preterm birth, but that's not the case for everyone. And it wasn't the case for me. I stayed healthy and was able to do that. And my first experience of tandem nursing was actually at the birth. So my oldest actually nursed to get me into active labor. And then my youngest had his first meal at my breast with his brother. I had both of them latched on, and the oldest one kind of held the youngest one as they nursed together. And that was the beginning of our tandem experience. And that lasted, I don't know how long that lasted. Sometimes I feel like it was 3 months. Sometimes I feel like it was 5 months, but I don't feel like it was too long. At the time, I was going through a lot of changes in my family. And I had separated from my husband and then moved across country. So I didn't want to stop my oldest I didn't want to wean him. And so we just continued on for some time. And then when he was ready to give the milk to his brother, or when I was ready for him to give the milk to his brother, because I was working through some mental health challenges and it was just becoming a lot for me to produce so much. And I'm extremely active. So production has been a challenge for me with both of my children, just with me getting enough calories to maintain my supply and all of that. So they nursed together for some time. And then while I was nursing my youngest, a family friend adopted a child and was waiting for her milk to come in. And so I was providing milk for her. So I would pump and provide milk for her. And then I was still nursing my baby. But I never thought about that as tandem until you told me that, Takisha. I was like, oh, I guess that does make sense because I was providing milk for two children.
Well, you said three
And
because didn't you say your oldest was still getting express milk?
oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. So he was right because I didn't give my oldest, we didn't like transition to another type of milk for some time. Like he was still on breast milk. We would put that in his smoothies and his oatmeal. Like he was still getting breast milk. And I was pumping. I hate pumping. I really don't like pumping is not my favorite thing. So anytime I can't encourage the child to come to my body, that was preferred. And I think at some point, after Assad, that's my oldest, after he weaned, there was, or so I thought he weaned, he did come back for a little bit of time just for comfort. I don't think it was actually for the new, I don't know. I guess so I hear mixed feelings about whether you're getting nutrients. You're always getting nutrients when you're getting milk from my body. So I guess it was a mixture, but he did come back to the breast. Not
The bonding.
consistently, yes, not for a long time, but he would love to, like he would fiddle with his brother. So I would have a toddler on one breast and an infant on the other, and the toddler would be fiddling with the other. Like they definitely bonded at the breast. And it was helpful for me because the toddler flipping and all of that kind of stopped for a while. Yeah, so that was my experience with tandem nursing.
I love it. Like I'm trying to get into the mindset of like remembering all the different things like we could talk about like the experience or like what to expect. For me,
I don't think you
I
can tell people what to expect though. Like
that's true.
I don't know if somebody, I knew it was possible. I think that was important to know that it was possible to feed both of my children at the same time, even
Other
though they
people are
were
doing
not
it.
right. And they're not multiples, like they weren't twins or triplets or anything like that. And I knew that my husband at the time, he had nursed from his grandmother who had a baby recently. So I knew that it was possible. I didn't know how. I had questions about whether like one breast had to be Assad's and the other had to be Zaid's. Figured that out quickly because there was some discomfort. I didn't know I didn't know how. I just knew it was possible and figured out the how as I went along.
Yeah, it could. I mean, and it could be either, right? Some people do that. They have one for the toddler and one for the infant, and some people don't care. Whichever one you
Mhm.
go for. Some advice is to feed the infant first. Um, and some people, if they have like clogged ducts, it's always like, oh, get the toddler on because they're much more efficient and a better nurser or whatever. So it depends on where you are. But like we are in this state of being more inclusive and being more like broadening the idea of the human milk feeding and what breastfeeding is supposed to look like for everybody. And
Mhm.
really getting into the idea that if you are pumping, if you are expressing milk, that is still feeding. If you are providing human milk, your body is doing what it needs to do. So yes, I have not checked on what the experts are saying, but you're gonna hear it from me that like what Jillian was saying, that if you are someone who has a child and you're an overproducer and you are providing milk, pumping milk for another family, you are in the tandem nursing because you are actually providing milk for more than one being. Like, and I want us to get into understanding that. So if pumping is valid way of providing human milk, so therefore you are feeding the village, and that's something that we need to show more of and explain more and acknowledge more, because that's another way of normalizing everything. We want to make sure that other people are getting human milk and know that there's other ways that you can get human milk. If you can't lactate, you can reach out in your community to someone that you trust that is feeding their baby to support you and your baby if they can. Like, that's the stuff that we need to like normalize. I think when we talk about what's it called, milk sharing, that some people in the Black community are like, what's that? But if somebody is a loving parent providing milk to their baby, and they're just going to share that with you, like, that's actually healthy. It's fine. Our culture is a little like whatever. But yeah, I want to get into the idea of, I'll talk about my experience because my experience is less likely. There's less people out there who have multiples who are feeding. What did you want to say?
No, go ahead. I'll come back.
Like being in the twin community, there are not many people, especially not many Black people, who are able to feed their twins full term. And full term means beyond, well, up to the 2-year mark. But it depends. Like, it depends on who you ask. But the World Health Organization and CDC, everybody recommends 2 years for breastfeeding. The national average is well beyond that. Like, when I tell people in other countries that people nurse until 7, they're like, wait, what? And they look at their 7-year-old like, I could never. But yes, people like, and it's not like daily. It's not how we think of it, but it's still like children up until 7 are getting human milk, actively latching to somebody. So yes. Um, and the national average is very low because the United States is so low. Like, we're like 6 weeks, like 3 months, and mostly because of people going back to work. Yeah.
And there's lack of support. Like, I do feel like a lot of times the statistics are only saying what is not happening from the mother or the parent, right? Black people are not, this percentage of Black people are not breastfeeding. What if we began to think about it? This percentage of Black people are not getting the support to provide human milk. And I think that we would begin to shift the way we show up for each other. And we'll start to change conversations about how we're showing up for each other. Because if there was more support for people with multiples, for Black folks in particular with multiples, and we start to kind of reclaim our mindset and thought process of how we've always fed our families, right? Not just our children, our own children, but how we fed our families, how we fed the village, then perhaps we would show up differently now.
Yeah. Well, it's so weird for me because like multiples are treated like you're high risk, as if we haven't, it's not a natural thing to have multiples. And I understand many people lose a twin, or lose if they have three or whatever. So multiples, it is a risk, but I'm talking about being in, like, once I found out I was having twins, the discussion on me wanting to VBAC, because I did have a C-section with my first, kind of went out the window because the doctor was like, wait, what? Like, I mean, I still was trying to push it, but once it was twins, it was a whole different conversation. Here in New Jersey, you have to have your twins in an operating room. There's 2 sets of staff. It was such a jarring experience. So I'm not really going to get into my birth story now, but we've been down that road. It was definitely not pleasant with my twins versus my single. But in joining the groups and being part of spaces, you realize that people automatically think, oh, how am I going to do that? So I was thinking that in the beginning, how am I going to do that in tandem my oldest? So with my experience, I think I found out it was twins around the 8-week mark, and I was still nursing my toddler, and he was like barely eating either. Like, he was like 20 something months, and he was barely eating. And when my husband was like, "Oh, we're having twins, so you're gonna wean him, right?" And I was just like, I want him to. I was in that mindset of like, I want him to, be done when he's done. I want that relationship to be on his own terms. But I was also in a lot of groups where everybody was getting pregnant with their second, and they were all expressing, they all wanted to nurse through the pregnancy because that was like the thing to do. But some of them were struggling. Some of them had nursing aversions and stuff like that. And I was nervous about that because I don't like being pregnant. Like, pregnancy is not my jam. I'm not that like I'm nauseous a lot. I'm grumpy. Like, I'm discomfort. So adding a nursing aversion to that didn't sound like a good plan, whatever. But we were 8 weeks in, so it was like whatever. But after my husband and I had that conversation, my oldest was like, he didn't ask one day, and then he didn't ask the next day, and I was like, ooh, advantage, just take advantage of this. So when he did eventually ask, like that second night or whatever, I was like, all done. We did that for a week. And I think at the 2-week mark, he was like, asking again, and I tried to latch him because I was like, oh, comfort, that's the thing that we do, whatever. And he forgot how to latch. So I think if he remembered how to latch, I probably would have figured out something to do, but I was very nervous about it. I wasn't really like on board. I'm like, I have two boobs. I don't know how that's gonna work. But I was very adamant because I was a skilled nurser. I was very experienced in the process with my first. So going into it with the two, it was something that was a little nervous for me because I wasn't sure what that was going to look like. Like I was telling someone, people fetishize having twins. Like when I was throughout my pregnancy, even as I was having them, people were like, "Oh, I want twins." I'm like, "You do?" Like I was, because the realization, it's two babies. Two babies are coming in. My twins were fraternal, so it's like having siblings at the same time. So they're not like how we fed like glorify like having what's it called, identical babies, where they're all going to do the same thing. They're going to be like a duplicate of the same person. I don't know what it's like to have identicals, but I'll tell you that's not how it is when you have fraternal. So when they were first born, they latched on, both of them. I was gonna do one at a time. That was my plan. Oh, I'm just gonna feed one and then I'll feed the other. But if you think about that, it's just how you think about with pumping. When someone's like, "Oh, I'll pump when I'm pumping so I can sleep through the night." No, you still have to remove milk from your body even throughout the night. Your body needs to send those messages. So um if I were to feed them individually, I would have had a baby latched to me 24/7. Like I literally would have. So the experience for me was both of them, my daughter and my son we latched them both because they came out and they were hungry when I finally got to feed them. Um, and it was great. I was master. My daughter was a little sleepy when she first came out, so I did have to pump a little in the beginning to kind of get her to learn how to latch and keep on and kind of move those muscles and get her working because she was like, "Oh, I'm tired." She was a little thing. So through that process, it was interesting. Like as we was this, as they grew a little bit, they definitely was like if one asked, the other asked. So it was always like a tandem thing. So you see pictures, most of my pictures are both of them latched. There was very few times where one would get milk and the other wouldn't. But they were always on their different schedule. But it was a great experience. I do miss the experience that I had with my older one because it was so much attention to the two babies. Our bond kind of like was disjointed. I do have some pictures of me nursing them and him on my shoulder up here because he would climb up to, to sit. He's like, "Well, I need a spot on mommy." We napped a lot together, so he would be between my legs and they would be latched on either side. I used to tell people I felt like a cow or like a dog because sometimes when they became toddlers, we'd be playing in their playroom and I just lay on the ground and they just come over and nurse and then crawl away. And I'm like, I feel like when you see the pictures of the dogs with the teeth like out and they're just like, ah. But I did enjoy it. I don't glorify nursing at all. Like my breastfeeding experience is like, well, it's real, some real things like, but I didn't have a lot of like issues. I think in the first 6 weeks, it's that, you're building up your supply. So that's what we call like boot camp. Like it's like how your body needs to know how much milk are we making. And I was already an oversupplier. What does this baby need or whatever? So it was a struggle. I didn't have as much home support as I would have liked. But my husband was home for at least the first week or so. And then dealing with the toddler because they're 27 months apart. So like getting on it. I know when I weaned, it was January 1st, 2017. I was like, "Oh, I'm done. We're done. This is a wrap," because toddlerhood is no joke. But yeah, I don't know what else about my journey. I did not like that pillow that everybody suggests for twin parents. I forget the name of it now. Was it I forget the name. But I didn't like that because it wasn't user friendly for somebody for if you're home alone. Like it's like you have to I would have to get on the couch, set up the twins on the couch, make sure TV, I had the remotes and everything on my phone or whatever, put the pillow on, and then sit down and then bring them over. And I was like kind of it was like a whole process. Like some of those things are designed that somebody can hand you the babies once you're set up, and doing it yourself. I was not a fan of that. So I'd like to just lounge on the couch and just, hold them with a pillow propped up underneath me, whatever. And they spend their time, whatever. And it's a good process. I definitely believe, like, for some people who have who have twins out there, that it is possible. You do need a little support to get it tried. I tried so hard when I was in the beginning, before I learned about Chocolate Milk Cafe, trying to coax other people, like, hey, I had twins, it was possible. I want to help other people support with tandem nursing, because it's like, I think it's, a good thing to do. But I understand that for some people, if you don't have the support to get through the first 6 weeks, you're,
Do you feel like you had challenges with supply?
I did not have supply challenges. I'm an oversupply. Look, with my first, I had an overactive letdown, and he had what's it called? Reflux. So I had to figure out some of those things. And I did end up with mastitis once when I was trying to pump. And I was responding way too well to the pump and all that stuff. But because I figured that stuff out with him, I knew kind of how to like gauge it with the twins. And I got an IBCLC for a sister. So, I got that in the bag. I will tell you all my privileges. Like, those were really good things. That's why, like, now we're like, oh, let's be in support, because I know what worked and what didn't. No, in the beginning, it was mostly my daughter not being able to latch, like, no, not latch. She was able to latch, but she would sleep she would fall asleep. So I'm trying not to use the terminology lazy nurser, but she was just, she kind of fall asleep. So pumping was, like you said, you don't like pumping. I did not like it. So when I was pumping with her, I remember one time I pumped a 9-ounce bottle. And of course I was in that phase of like having glass bottles. I put a glass bottle and it broke in the freezer. And I was like, that's 9 ounces of But
now that is a reason to cry over spilled milk, okay?
I was mad the bottle broke, because them glass bottles are not cheap. Oh, I was mad that I lost all that milk. I'm like, how can I say no? You can't save milk that's been in a glass. But yeah, so going through the process of trying to get her to to like fully like actively nurse, it was a short time, but it was definitely something I was like, oh, I'm not feeling this. Like, having to like figure out how to give her milk on a spoon to make sure she got enough calories in her so she could like liven up a bit or whatever. But she was small. So they were born at 37 weeks, but she was like 4 pounds, 10 ounces. So she was little bitty compared to her brother being 6 pounds even. Like, that was a big difference in size. There's still a significant difference in size. But she was gaining, and we talked about that this week about how do you know if they're like gaining weight. And she was always on the smaller end, but she was pooping and peeing and hitting her milestones and everything. So that was good. But in the beginning, it was like how to get her latch. And then I don't know what it's like if you're providing formula. What?
So I was just gonna say, I had a challenge with latch for both of them, but I do feel like my oldest was helpful in, how the infants kind of mimic what you're doing, and he would just sit in front of his baby. It was almost like his responsibility to show the baby how to open his mouth. You got to show him how to open his mouth. Show your brother how to open his mouth. And he would just do it over and over until he started following him. And he's like, go, milk, 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 milk. We were doing sign language too at the time. So he would just be like, milk, milk, milk. So I think that is another, I guess, bonus to tandem nursing when you have a toddler and an infant, because they do kind of help each other out.
Yeah, for us, it was, I think most of my challenges were with having a toddler in general and getting around. And so like the breastfeeding, like even if I did nurse one at a time, which now that I think about it, I did do that when they were like, when I would wear them. Because I don't remember ever tandem nursing while carrying any babies. But I do have pictures of just going to the park and like nursing them all out. But the process, what was I saying? The process of parenting in general, figuring out how to juggle life with all these babies, because the reasons why I would tell people I'm a cautionary tale for twins is like because they're two babies. They're two babies at once. They don't always cry at the same time. They don't always poop at the same time. But even if they do, that's stressful because you have to change two poopy diapers, and especially when they get into toddlerhood, try running around after a toddler who's pooped and trying to, and then you got to do that again. Um, so yeah, so nursing wise, it was pretty, easy going. The learning curve was because I already did this. I've done this. I understand like if there's any issues with the baby in this way or like the check for the diapers or whatever. But the beginning was with my daughter. But it's the time frame, like the thing that you have to really get into, even if you've been down this road before, is how often you have to feed. So where with my first, I could be mobile while feeding a lot. I could not do that as a twin mom. I still have some like back issues from sitting on the couch like all day. So I would get it. My son, my toddler watched a lot of television, or I would try to plan a lot of play dates and have people over. Because I also was very grumpy about leaving the house and having to use a stroller because I was a baby wearing mom. And I'm like, this stroller is for the birds. I don't like having to bring out this tandem stroller to go places. Everybody was doing forest school and stuff. And I'm like, and I'm beholden to this stroller because I don't know how to wear 3 babies. I could wear 2 and that's fine. But the third one wants to be worn too. So how do you figure that out? Pictures of that as well. But yeah, and then it was funny because it was either like I remember being in the stage of like, I don't know if I'm more stressed out being in the house alone or being trying to figure out how to get out the house. And it was like, up and down. But
I think that brings up a good point just in terms of mental health when it comes to feeding your children, one or tandem, for you and the baby. So I don't know, like, how did you prioritize or notice when you needed a pause or not? Did you think about any of that, or was it just like feed the kids?
Yeah, so that terminology, sleep when the baby sleeps. And then people like sleep when the baby sleeps and people get like sarcastic about it, like iron when the baby irons or, do taxes when the baby does
I've
taxes.
never heard that.
Like people get really snarky so for them, it's like, I can't sleep when the baby sleeps. I got other stuff to do. And I'm like, no, yes, do laundry when the baby does laundry. Do taxes when the baby does taxes. Sleep when that baby is sleeping. Because honestly, in all honesty, if the baby can't do some of those things, you shouldn't be doing some of those things. So we have in our notes like what helps and what's important or whatever. And I think acknowledging for myself, like, oh, I cleaned up that mess that happened with my toddler over here, whatever. And by the middle of the day, I'm like, you know what? I'm not cleaning up any more messes. I'm done for the day. Like, I'm just going to chill. Like my husband would come home after 6 and just see me on the couch like every day. And I'm like, in his head, he must be like, what the hell you do all day? I left you sleeping in the bed and now you're sitting on the couch all day. Have you done anything? And I'm just like, and he'd come home and just get out a vacuum and start vacuuming the messes that were there. And that was very helpful because it was like, there was no expectation of like, you haven't done anything all day because he could see, oh, she's passed out on the couch with babies attached to her and a toddler is watching a television, so something went down today, whatever, and this messes over here. So having someone who could just acknowledge that, oh, I'm just gonna
yeah, I think that's important too, because when I was tandem nursing, I didn't have their father there, but I did have my aunt. And I felt bad that I had to move in with her with my 2 kids. And I felt like I failed as a mother because I couldn't care for this whole thing just in terms of, and I think being able to provide milk for my children was like that thing I was doing right and that was good for my brain. But then in retrospect, as I reflect on that experience, I also think it was good for my oldest mental health because I kind of took him away from his best friend because he was home with his father for the entire time and now he wasn't seeing him at all. And so the nursing process became this family bonding experience. So it was super supportive for I guess for all of our mental health. But I do remember my aunt saying to me one time, you can't do all of it at one time. You can't do all of it, or she maybe say, you can't do all of it at the same time, something like that, where just hearing that and having a support person who was able to identify when I was about to break. And I didn't know it, but I was on the verge, I was heading towards a breakdown. And for her to say that, it was just kind of like, ooh, but I have to, I'm still in that, I'm very strong-willed. And so I'm like, yes, I do. I have to do this, that, and the other, and I have to do all the things. But for her to give me permission, to say that, for me to give myself permission, I was slowly able to process that I'm not a bad mother if I decide to wean this older person from my body, right? I can still provide the milk, but I think that was helpful for my mental health to be able to acknowledge what was becoming too much and forget what society says about how you're supposed to take care of your child, forget about whatever I read, and just figure out what was going on with us. But I do still think that I had to pay attention to what was happening at the breast for us, because it was definitely our time. And then switching to the oldest would read to the youngest at the breast, so I wouldn't completely remove the experience. Like maybe he wasn't latching on at the time, but he was still getting that bonding experience with the two of us. I do think that we need to bring up mental health in almost all of our conversations, because as Black folks, mental health is kind of on the sidelines. Like we don't talk about that because we have to go, 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 go. And thinking about the whole big pause, that go, go, go is what leads us to a breakdown. And the more conversations we have about paying attention to what, even and not just mental health in the sense of when you feel bad, but what was feeling good in that moment too. So we can kind of keep accessing that.
Yeah, I was grounded way more with everybody was a baby than now, because I do feel a little bit more in the go, go, go than I did then, because it was like, you got to sit down and nurse these babies. Oh, you have to do it again. And they need a nap and they don't sleep well without you. So you need to relax with them. I had a person actually like say to me, I'm like surprised you haven't had a breakdown, like a mental break. And I looked at her and was like, I've had several. But I'm a Black woman, so that looks differently. Like me having a vent on Facebook was like my like little breakdown here like that. Or like me, my husband literally was like, yeah, no more kids. Because my experience, I told you I don't like being pregnant or whatever. 2015, I don't even remember 2015. Like sometimes I look at pictures like, oh yeah, that happened. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. And I look at the date and I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Like my marriage was like, we are like, I married my best friend. Like I can get into a lot of the different stuff of like all the things that didn't work for me was less about the nursing than it was about like the experiences of being a parent of like like a lot of people have a struggle when they go from one to two. We need to talk more about the expectations, like especially if you're in this attachment bonding situation, especially if you're breastfeeding and bed sharing and all these things. You build a certain bond with that baby, and then when you bring another one in, it's like a thing. So I would tell people, my kids need 8 hours of my time attention. I have 3 children. Do the math. Where's the time for me? Where's the time for my marriage? So it was a struggle, I will say, in general, but it wasn't so much about the milk process because I had the support. I can't emphasize enough how we have like really positive experiences when it comes to the milk because we had the experience and because we had the support. Without that support, I don't know what tandem nursing would have looked like for me, because I don't, and I also am fearful of that because like I've watched someone else's baby and had to like get up in the middle of the night to like produce formula for them. And when I was nursing my babies, it was literally like a rollover, latched to the breast. We had to figure out our whole sleeping situation for that. We had a whole bunk bed situation where it was like a crib up to the bed. I was on the bottom one. My husband slept with my oldest on the top bunk or whatever. And it was a whole situation. But it was actually better. My twins slept a lot better with each other because they had each other than with my first or whatever. But yeah, but I had a lot of issues. I think having someone bring me food once in a while. I had a person one time was like, well, what do you need? I'm like, well, I can manage making the food. I just can't get to the grocery store. And she just asked for a list and my preferences, because I can be picky about like what because she got me stuff to make spaghetti, like what kind of meat I'm using, what kind of like noodles I'm using. And she went and bought exactly what I needed. And to this day, I'm like, that was the best thing ever. She just and I'd have to like stress out about like she got the wrong sauce or the wrong noodles. What? Nope, she got exactly what I asked for, exactly what I needed, and brought it to my house. And I made spaghetti, and I was so happy. Like I was just like, thank you. I was so appreciative of that. So people doing little things like that, actually having a community that was in place so that when I needed to like schedule a play date, or when I was like, okay, I need to get out the house or whatever, there were people around that were there for me in that way. A lot of people I knew were having their second born and was amazed at how well they thought I was together with having 3 children under 3 at the time. But I was struggling in certain ways, but I was managing that through. I think I was getting the me time with like the one with the even with the children, because like playtime would be like they just want me in the room. Nap time, I was getting sleep. I was recharging or whatever. I was not eating well. I've never been able to figure out the proper diet while nursing. So that's why I still have some issues in that range now. But I think that's something that we should be talking about pre-pregnancy, into pregnancy, whatever we call that I would been talking about with a lot of people, like health, your diet, you know, what you're eating or whatever, and bringing that, transitioning that, because you're not going to make good choices once you're pregnant. You're not going to make good choices once you're nursing. You're not going to make good choices once you're parenting.
All the time. It's possible. Yeah. Choices are choices, but sometimes you don't know. If you don't know the good choices to make, you won't make them. So it's kind of like the more you, it's so when people become pregnant and they wait until birth to get nursing lactation support, right? I feel like it's late. You know, the earlier you begin to be in those spaces, even if you don't have questions, because in the beginning, I don't know what questions I needed to have. So it was important to be in spaces with people to be like, oh, I didn't think about that. And I'm glad you talked about the sleeping arrangement, because even for me, we bed shared. And with the bed sharing process, I'm grateful. And again, recognizing privileges. Sorry, guys, basketball is about to start. And so people are coming around. So excuse me if you hear more time. But we bed shared, and I was grateful and happy to have a bed with a trundle. So they would both nurse. I would nurse my toddler on the edge of the bed. So when he's done, I would shift him to the lower bed, and then I could have some time. And I didn't even think about doing that until my aunt said, you need more space, because we were in a twin bed. It was a twin size bed. And I was complaining of my neck and complaining of this and complaining of that. And again, talk about privilege, because she also gave me access to a chiropractor, which is another thing that we need to, as we're piling up resources, how many chiropractors and other types of healers can we get into our stash that is open to providing services to the mom, the parent, the baby at affordable cost, because insurance doesn't always cover that.
Yeah, craniosacral. Craniosacral was something we did with the twins when they were first born. So that might have been another thing for my daughter. Like I said, she was tight and whatever. So opening her up in certain ways was actually probably beneficial for our breastfeeding journeys. Learning about tongue ties, or where you need like shallow latches, like actually seeing support. Everybody I talk to in the field of maternal health has a different theory on when we should start talking about lactation and pregnancy and health and stuff like that. And they're all right. Because it's all, you know, like, so I'm talking to my kids about nutrition. We're talking about stuff at this stage. Talking to somebody who is pregnant and already in that. So like, I thought I was going to read all the books while I was pregnant. I couldn't function enough. I was laying there, like, so that was too late, you know? So being part of the community, like Facebook, say what it is, we are on Facebook right now, but the Facebook groups were very helpful for me, because I got to see different opinions. and different people share different things, and different people talk about why they did this and that. And that's why I like our support groups for Chocolate Milk Cafe. So I'm gonna bring that back around for peer-to-peer support. Listening to other people's experiences, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, how they overcame certain things was very beneficial, because I am a person that is I don't remember what type of like research or whatever, but I like to hear like the stories, anecdotal stories or whatever, because then I get to process and be like, hey, that might work for me, or maybe I'll try that or whatever, and not anybody tell me, well, you need to do this, or this is what the studies or research shows or whatever. No, just hearing real people who look like me, who have shared experiences with me, telling, like expressing their stories. So that's why we do this. That's why we have these lives, or that's why we have these discussions, and that's why we have the support groups, because it's important to me to just to for me, it's important to just um, take all that in and take it in at a stage where you're able to receive it. Like, I'm not necessarily campaigning that people who aren't even gestated like, and pregnant join Chocolate Milk Cafe necessarily groups, but there's so much information on the internet, especially when we have these Black body feeding weeks and baby feeding. We're talking about infant feeding and full term nursing. Read some of those stories. Look at what other people are saying. There are people who are in the menstrual community, health communities, or reproductive. I mean, they have information as well that you should be tacking onto, and don't wait until your child is of age to menstruate to tell them anything, but actually tell them more. You know, like, and don't wait till just a kid that is menstruating to tell them stuff. Like, all of us need to understand this information. So yeah, I don't know how much we really shared specifically in the tandem meeting, because, like, I don't know. I have a little bit of headache today
Well,
for this, but
we spoke about what Tandem is, right? And the different ways it could look like. We spoke about our experiences. We talked about resources and who and what was supportive. We talked about sleeping and tandem nursing. We talked about baby wearing and leaving the house with Tandem. We
that's true.
briefly
Okay, so we're good.
we touched on mental health. We talked
Yeah.
we
All
talked
right.
a little bit about nutrition. I know for me, I had challenges with nutrition when I was feeding my first, and the challenges didn't stop when I came to the second, just because I exercise, I ran a lot, and I kind of had to pump the brakes, but so I could get up more calories. And hydration was hard for me, but I didn't think about like other ways to hydrate, like soups and juices and fruit. I just didn't think about those ways of hydration. I was only thinking water. Only thing. Oh, and here's a new tip. Just in terms of hydration, I like chia seeds, and I just like chia seeds. I know they have a lot of nutritional value, but they also help your body absorb the hydration. So putting a little bit in your water, or on your salad, or on your breakfast bowl, or whatever, helps your body absorb the moisture. Like, it helps the moisture. So that's another little tip
That's
to
what I
share.
like, those energy bites. I usually put chia seeds in energy bites. So that's the thing. I'm not gonna say the group I was part of, but when I was having the twins, I was part of a group where four of us were pregnant at the same time. I say five because I guess because I was having the twins, there was five babies born within the same time frame, and we were trying to do like new mommy meals or whatever they called it or whatever. And I kind of was like, you know what? I don't necessarily need food from you all. There's a lot of our diets are a little different or whatever, and I can manage my husband and I to like put a roasted chicken and feed our family with that, because we're very picky as well. But like other things, like I was like, come over, like you remember Jillian had come back to New Jersey at that point, came over, washed my dishes. So like I talked to you most of the time, but that was also something that I needed, like this, to have someone else, another body in the house or whatever. Other people came over and were trying to help me with like certain things. We ended up doing these care kits where I like, because of the way I was nursing, I needed a pillow. So I made this like therapeutic pillow. And of course, I had a family member who had a baby the month before. I sent her one. We made a relaxation mist because I was researching that, like other things that would help revive or whatever. And getting the care kit in general was like a good thing. Like, you know somebody who had a baby, put together some things they like for them, because we are so um ingrained in this community where it's like, oh, the baby, it's all about the baby, not about the, but when it's somebody who is lactating, if you care about that baby, you would care about the lactating person. So
Right.
make sure they're happy, make sure they're taking care of themselves, because a lot of what you need to know about nursing and human milk is that it pulls from the person who's lactating. So if you're not taking your vitamins, if you're not eating well, the baby will still be fine, but you
If
still need
you're
to.
not pausing, like you have to find some way to pause at some time in order to be able to continue to produce. And I think sometimes as supporters, people are like, well, I don't know what to do. They won't let me hold the baby. They won't let me. I had a friend who said, you sitting down to eat a meal with me, even though I didn't hold the baby or whatever, meant the world. Literally sitting to have a meal. I know it's COVID, so you can do a Zoom meal for them to be able to have a conversation with someone who is literally focusing on the parent.
Send
How
them a
are
funny
you
meme.
doing?
Send them a text message that's just like to brighten their day. Like I'm feeling
Right.
like good spirits. Like let just knowing that someone else is thinking of them is actually really good. Like those things were very helpful. Me trying to just
Mm-hmm.
getting through like a person. I know some people say like, oh, even if babies are sleeping and you just watch them or play with the older kid while they go take a shower or something like that.
Ooh, that shower
Um,
time. That time in the bathroom
alone.
is golden without worrying about someone calling. I feel like that first shower, when you do get some support, you still hear the baby crying and they're not crying. Like you hear it, but it's not.
Phantom cries. Yep. I still hear
Right.
babies. I still hear people talking to me while I'm in the shower. Like, what's going on?
Right.
Now
You
I
just
just ignore
during
them.
those
But like,
pauses. But
yeah,
there are
like,
ways to support.
and be mindful of like what people like, because I am very introverted, even though it doesn't look like it for some people. And when people would call me, like my husband and my sister, like my husband called me during the day, like what you do all day, that was a triggering question to me. They didn't mean anything by it, but if you ask me what you do all day, I've done nothing. I've fed people. Like, stop asking me that question. And for them, it's
With
like they meant
okay,
well. But yeah,
you just said you did nothing but feed all people. I
but
fed
yeah,
people all day. Like that is a whole vibe. That is a whole vibe. You're feeding 2, 3 people
that's
because you
that's
have to
fair.
include yourself. Right.
Yeah, that's true. Like, you know how we get into the like that, but it was like it felt like pressure to me, like it felt like a
Right.
judgment, especially because I was absorbing other people's and like I said, it would be my husband, my sister. They were very supportive. They weren't trying to be like, did you get out of the bed? Did you do it? Like they were just asking, like it's a
What'd you do today?
yeah. So
And it
yeah,
could be
so
a mental health check too. Like, have you done anything for yourself today? Which could also be a trigger, just talking about
but
triggers. Like,
be
yeah,
creative with the person you're talking to. Know them a little more. Like if I feel like when we talk about we care about people and we want to like help them and support them, we should um what is it called? Change our shift our focus on what they are actually expressing they need and what their wants are, because if we do love and care and support someone, we will
right,
cater to them. So you this may be the way your love language looks, but you need to also understand what their
right.
receiving of that is like. So that's just my takeaway. But you were gonna say
So
something. I
can
was
I, you
gonna.
just, yes, you just made me think of something because we're always promoting institutions to listen to Black women, right? Listen to Black people. And we have to begin to do that too. And in that process, what you just brought up is the process of active listening is to also show up and act in the way that they're saying they need you. And so as Black people, we can also do better at listening to Black people. So if what you're saying is bothering me and you can't understand why, you might not need to understand why right now. If you want to support me, just do it or don't, something like that.
Show
And then
up
there
or
was
show
something,
yeah. So yeah, I was gonna just wrap up a little bit because I see the time, and you and I can talk forever, and I'm thinking of other things that we may not have talked about for Tandem, but hey, I want us to have started the conversation and to get more into the Tandem conversation. I think if you have any questions, feel free to ask us, send us a message. I did not check anything that's going on Facebook because I'm so engaged with Jillian in this conversation. But if we see any questions or whatever, we'll either answer them in the comments or we can do a part 2 at some point in time of talking more of the stuff we missed. Maybe we'll, you know, kind of explore it a little more and see if anybody wants to come on who's an expert or other experiences. Because I have acknowledged that Jillian and I have fairly positive tandem experiences, and it's okay to have ones that are less than ideal, or someone maybe didn't hit their goals, but like and to share like what their experience was like. So I'm open. I would like to, you know, explore the conversation more. But we did have our final like little question about like prioritizing rest, and we talked about how we tried to prioritize rest even though that wasn't the terminology we were using. But this week, Black Breastfeeding Week, is the big pause, collective rest for collective power, and we are all about collective power and being in community and collaboration and, you know, growing everything out. And by the way, they are doing a big pause. I forget what it's called. A rest. I meant to make sure I knew the name of what's happening at 1 o'clock. So go on to the Black Breastfeeding Weeks page and see what they're doing today. And learn some other things. They're doing like this 15-minute pause and rest and whatever. So join in. But for us, Jillian, since you've been doing our reflections all week so far, the past 3 days, is anything that you want to highlight of that you've been like prioritize how you've been prioritizing your rest?
Yeah, so breathing is very restful for me. So I have been starting my mornings with breath and stillness. That for me is very helpful. And I also tell my children that that's my intention, to breathe more. So they do remind me to breathe and tell me when it's time for me to take a breath. Then I start going a little bonkers. So I do prioritize rest by starting my day in stillness. No pressure. I try not to think about my to-do list, but just starting the day in stillness has been helpful for me. What about you?
My initial reaction is, what's rest?
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of times what I'm noticing is that when people hear rest, they're automatically thinking about sleep.
I know,
And
I've heard you
sleep
say
is
that. I'm
not
like,
the
that's a good point.
yeah, sleep is not the only way to allow your body to rest. You can allow your body to rest by changing what you're eating. You can allow your body to rest by breathing. You can allow your body to rest by simply slowing down.
So I've done
So
I haven't, when we first learned about the thing, I was trying to like do certain things. My sister was over at the beginning of the month, or maybe it was the end of last month, whatever it was. I cleaned up my office and tried to like make room for like crafting and giving myself more room to do things because I'm getting stuff out the way. But I still fall back into the pattern because, you know, I'm hustling, bustling over here on the behind the scenes for this chocolate milk cafe stuff, and I'm just not really giving myself the breaks that I probably need and should take. But the other day, I went for a walk with the kids. It was hot outside, but I was like, oh, this is nice. Like I knew I had a meeting coming up, and I was like, okay, guys, I have an hour before our meeting. Let's go outside. And I was like, oh, this is nice. Like just to relax and just, I've been like stealing little like breaks here and there just to sit down or vegging out on like shows that I don't really care too much about. Like engaging in the conversation, like what's happening in the scene or whatever like that. But um, I'm getting a little better. I had a resolution, I guess, for this year to not to delegate, and it's coming together. You know, I'm getting people on our team and stuff that can do like take stuff off my plate. I am failing at delegating to the children because by this time I would have liked to have at least one child who was really good at cooking. But my daughter has been making herself eggs, so that's been something. So, but that was more her than me. But I think I'm going to spend a little more time. I'm going to try to take some breaks once this week is over, and do some more delegating and do some more like rest for myself. So I have been trying to take some moments, but I've been not that great at it. I admittedly am like, oh, you know, you have a headache right now because you don't sit your behind down. But in my defense, it's because my fire alarm went off at my smoke detector went off at 3 a.m. So I did not sleep well last night. This is why I'm a little low. But yeah, I'm working on it. I think I love seeing the conversation. I love you doing the breathing. So like tuning in, even though I'm late to the game, I'm like, oh yeah, oh, Jillian does a breathing stuff. Like, let me focus on that or whatever. And then the thing that I need to be held accountable for is putting my phone down. I don't know how someone can hold me accountable outside of the person in my house who will just like remove apps from my phone. Like, okay, you don't need this app no more. Like, take it off or whatever. But other than that, I do need to like put the phone down more. That's what I'm gonna try to work
That's
on.
a good point. Plug it up in another room. That's the only way I'll put my phone down.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about it. I just haven't. There's some things that I've done. I just haven't stuck to them. And yeah, it's coming. But you know what? I bought these bottles from IKEA because one of our homeschool moms had them. She puts them in the freezer so that they have water. I'm like, oh, let me get a bunch of bottles. I'll freeze them. So when we're at the play park or whatever we're doing, my kids, because it's 4 of us, you know, when we go, well, my husband says so, but when we go to like co-op stuff or whatever. But I've been actually using them and they've been actually working for me to drink water because first, I hate the fact that a plastic bottle is getting me to drink more water, but it's working for me. And I'm like, oh, I'm actually drinking more water than usual because I know that I should finish this bottle and then I get another one because I have like 6 of them. So they're IKEA bottles. They were like $2 or something like that. And we just keep refilling them. We have a filtration system. I just fill them with water, put them in the refrigerator and just take one out. So I have been drinking more water. And that has been helpful for me because like I need it. I need
yes. It sounds so minor, but it's so major to the body.
Especially if you are lactating, like water. How do I produce more milk? Rest in water.
Yep. Yep. And here we go to our continued conversation.
It's a circle. It just all comes back around. Like just all points lead to the same place. Like that's what yeah. But this has been great. I appreciate anybody who has joined in. I have not kept track of any of that stuff. I apologize. We haven't answered any questions. We are really actively engaged with each other here. Jillian and I enjoy talking to each other. Like I have good conversations with Jillian. I feel like we're polar opposites, but we help balance each other out. It's really great. Not so off,
it's
but like
so necessary.
I come with a weird energy in some areas and you are like more grounded in some areas. And then I think we do.
We swap it out.
Yeah. But
that goes to the collective rest for collective power. Because when we're able to vibe and bring that together, the boom is much bigger.
And I also like to emphasize the fact that you got to really respect people that you're in community with, because people that I respect and respect me, we go far. We go. It's a nice kind of like trust, and because when you build that foundation, there's also like a trust. Like, okay, I know when you're calling me out or you're saying something to me that maybe I'm not in love with, I'm receiving it because there's love and respect behind it. So, yeah, it's really good to have that. And I want that for everybody. So they joined some of our meetings. Unfortunately, we had a meeting in Kansas City today while we were talking. They're still on until another hour, actually. But Harlem is doing something on Monday. It's in person, though. But join us. There's some stuff going on. I think Rhode Island and Brooklyn meet next week. So we'll have some.
And another Zoom tomorrow.
Yeah, and then yes, thank you. I will be talking with Mystique Hargrove and Kaden Coleman, and wait, I'm almost done. We have some things. So, they just made it to the end, but they'll be joining us to have a conversation about inclusivity and lactation. We want all the types of inclusivity, but we're going to refocus mostly on gender inclusivity. I see from some things that are happening on the internet that y'all need a little lesson in what inclusivity should look like and why we need to be more inclusive. So we're going to have that conversation tomorrow. I am looking forward to that. Yeah, so we're doing all of those things, and like I said, send us some questions if we didn't touch upon everything, like you wanted to know about Tandem, and I named it Talk Tandem to me because we want to talk about it more. So I want to keep the conversation going. Yes. Thank you all. If you don't have anything, Jillian, I'm gonna end us here on our live. I don't know how to do that without. I'm gonna stop the
Peace.
bye recording.